So this is Claire over at Calendly. I'm the marketing director here. Thanks everyone for joining. And then I'm on the line here with Jack Kosakowski, who is a master of the social selling space. So as far as, as far as I'm already aware, but not everyone may be. So Jack comes from a background in sales and in marketing automation in the tech world. Jack, I myself have seen plenty of your content across LinkedIn, across Sales Hacker, across business to community, a ton of other places. So now you're part of the creation agency. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so had a really good run at Acton, loved it there, and then one of my clients owns probably this. I think it's the second or third largest marketing automation digital agency in the UK. So he and I partnered, and I'm opening up the US division. We have opened up. It's about 8 months old. So we're doing a lot of cool things. We work with 9 of the Fortune 500, and we do everything from their email, their social strategy, their social implementation. But really, my major focus is how do we get sales teams, B2B sales teams, or sales people to integrate or infuse social into their traditional or whatever type of sales process that they have, and how do we effectively do it to actually get revenue, right? I think that's the toughest part with social selling is you have a lot of marketers that talk about social selling, but they don't understand the actual sale part, and that's where I've really excelled. And I did about 1.4 million with the startup Acton in 2 years with an average of $9,000 to $12,000 deal size.
Nice, very nice. So I think you brought up a great point. People hear a lot about social selling, and if you're not in it day to day, it can be kind of difficult to tie all the activity that's involved to generating revenue. So before we jump into the specific tools, in your experience and in working with these companies with creation agency, what are some of the big blockers, for teams who are just getting started with it and figuring out, okay, how do we generate revenue from this?
I think is, just a strict process, right? There's always so much going on social media, right? There's so many different channels. There's so many different tools. And I think, sales reps get overwhelmed when you put more on their plate. So effectively figuring out a process that would actually eliminate time from their day and make them more efficient is where you actually see the buy-in. And then the other thing is simplicity, right? Really everything in sales starts and ends with the conversation. Social is just your new communication channel to do that with your buyers.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it. It's really not, apart from the fact that it's a different platform, it's essentially the same process. You're creating value for people and you're building relationships, right?
Yeah, there's business value, right? Like people don't think about, they think of value in different ways, but ultimately your buyer determines that value. So when they're giving you information from a one-to-one, personal perspective, whether that's, I say professionally or personally, how you take that information and give them some type of business or personal value is up to you. For example, this webinar, right? If somebody would have tagged you, Claire, in this webinar and shared it, and you would have got lead signups, and you would have seen that somebody was your advocate,
right?
That you wanted to actually sell Calendly a product. It's probably a good first touch is to give you a little value, give you something to make you look better at your job, right? To make your job easier, and essentially to generate more business for Calendly, right? The best salespeople are the ones that know how to give to get, right? Value versus ask.
Definitely, 100%. Well, why don't we jump into the logistics of how you're getting some of that done day to day. We've talked through them. I've got a slide for each one of these tools. And we'll start, if you're cool with it, I think we'll start with, I think the first one on your list was 360 Social. So tell us a little bit about what this is, how it's useful, why it's going to make sales easier on social.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of my absolute favorite tools for a variety of reasons. There's a gentleman out of Amsterdam or the Netherlands that actually created this tool. And essentially what it does is it goes, you hover over a link inside of somebody's LinkedIn profile, their Twitter profile, their email address, wherever that is on the web, and it will actually crawl the web and figure out what social channels that they're on pretty much. And so let me tell you, this is what fixes the problem for sales reps where they can't figure out where their buyers are, right? Are your buyers on social? What channels are they on? Where are they active? This tool will actually tell you all of that within seconds by just hovering over a link. And the cool thing about it is, I just wrote a blog post on this on LinkedIn, so I will share that after this if you guys are interested on what it looks like, how to download it, and all that. But essentially what happens is, if your buyer is on Twitter, right, my idea is that I use this tool. I click the button inside the tool, it takes me to their Twitter profile. I automatically follow them, put them into a targeted list, right, so I can cut out all the noise on Twitter. And the second piece to that is, what blogs are they blogging on? It'll tell you, are they on Medium? Are they on Quora? Are they, do they have their own personal blog? What's their company blog? And the second piece to that is, it will actually tell you their email address if it can find it, right? Their work email address. It'll tell you their phone number. It'll tell you everything possible that it can find. And it's free. It's a Google Chrome plugin. And there's so many different ways that you can use it. But one of the other major things is that a lot of sales reps struggle with, who do I spend my time with on social, right? Because somebody might have a Twitter profile. They might have a LinkedIn profile, that's great, but what if they're not active, right? Which happens a lot. So within this tool, it actually gives you their clout score, and what you can do is you can actually leverage that, right? To understand who's your social buyer and who's not your social buyer, so that you can, move the ones that aren't social into a traditional bucket, do phone, email.
Right.
And then the ones that are social, what I always suggest is that you put a little workflow in there, right? Twitter, connect them on Twitter, retweet, share something, like something, share a publish on LinkedIn, and then, send the email and then make the phone call, right? So do 5x value touches versus ask. And this tool eliminates the redundancy of the time that it takes to find all of those, what I like to say, value, the value portfolio, right, for the buyer, which is their words, their pictures, what's important to them, and all the channels where they actually live and want you to communicate with them.
Yeah, I think what's especially cool about that is that their clout score is included, so you can very, very quickly assess, like, okay, maybe this person's on Twitter, but they haven't shared anything since January of last year, so it's going to be a waste of my time to go to their Twitter account. But wow, they post a ton on LinkedIn, so I'm going to incorporate LinkedIn into my workflow with them versus hitting all these channels that really aren't that relevant.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I like to tell salespeople is that especially executives, kind of the Gen X baby boomers, they might not be highly engaged or sharing a lot of content. But one of the things that you got to realize is that doesn't mean they're not active on Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that's not where they get their news. That doesn't mean that's not where they go to learn about what's going on in their industry. So just because it doesn't look like they're active and visible doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't paying attention, right? So just keep that in mind. I would say, be smart who you spend your time with on social, and leverage that tool, the cloud score, to kind of do that. But at the same aspect, make sure that you don't always count out people that, don't show a heavy amount of activity.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to move to the next one, which I also am a huge fan of, and I'm excited to hear kind of like what the different aspects of this tool you prefer the most. But Crowdfire, awesome for extending your reach on Twitter.
Absolutely. So Crowdfire does a variety of things, and once again, this is actually a free tool at the most basic level. So the last two tools you can actually sign up from at no cost. And what I would say that I love about Crowdfire is the one thing about Twitter that most salespeople and social media marketers don't do correctly is build a niche audience, right? And there's, it's very hard to do. There's a few ways that you have to do it. One is consistency with hashtags, right? I'm a firm believer that if you're going to use Twitter for professional purposes, and especially in sales, you've got to figure out what your content strategy is around your hashtags, because hashtags are essentially what attract the buyer, the right people to you, right? Mm-hmm. Because your game on Twitter, your goal in the game on Twitter is not to have the most amount of followers. It's absolutely absurd if you believe that. So get that out of your brain. Your goal is to, is to attract the right people, right? That have interest in the value that you bring, and that, could potentially start conversation. Because when I'm looking at Twitter, I'm looking at one thing and one thing only. How can I create more conversations with the right people, right? Or how can I strengthen conversations with the people that have already started the conversation? Now I just want to strengthen and influence it, right, through a variety of ways. And then the other thing is, how can I keep the conversation going? A lot of salespeople don't understand that one of the best ways to use Twitter is to keep engaged with your current clients, right? Because a lot of times your clients, they don't want to have another lengthy conversation with you about the product. They probably figured it out, or if they have questions, they're going to reach out to you. So how do you stay visible, valuable, and connected to your buyer as their customer? Crowdfire is really cool because it's the one tool that allows you to build that niche audience. And you can build that niche audience through a variety of ways. One is the hashtag keyword search. So essentially, let's say that you sell social media marketing services. Mm-hmm. You can go in and you can look at, who's using the hashtag social media, who's using the hashtag social media marketing, right? But even deeper than that is you could say, okay, I want to follow people that, I want people to follow me that are my competitors. So you can go in, put your competitors' Twitter handle in there, and it'll pull up all their followers, because my guess is that the people that you want to sell to are probably the ones that are following them, right? Or, from an influencer standpoint, a lot of brands want to have influencers in their niche market follow them and share their expertise or their value of their brand. So, there's an influencer strategy around that as well. I would say one of the things that salespeople have to get really, really good at too is understanding who's in their audience. And what Crowdfire will do is it'll actually identify real time who just followed you, right? And you can clean out your followers, make sure that you keep a clean following. I'm one of those people that I use Crowdfire. One of the biggest use cases is I clean out my inactive followings, 3 days a week. So anybody that's not active for a month inside of my following, I unfollow them. Because to me, the true value of why I need Twitter, what value it brings to me from a business perspective is conversation. And inactive people, to me, they're not the ones that I'm going to even have a chance most of the time to even have a conversation with.
Yeah, definitely. We also use that aspect of it. So like the ability to unfollow someone if you notice they've been inactive, because you're right. It's not so much a build up an untargeted following game. It's build relationships with people who actually care about the niche and actually care about, engaging with you and having a real conversation. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, there's a variety of other ways that you can use Crowdfire. I would say that, in the beginning, it's a little bit overwhelming, just because there's so much going on, right?
Right.
But the same as for Instagram. If you've ever been to my Instagram, and I just put in I think I put it in the chat, my Twitter profile and my Instagram profile
awesome.
Are the exact same. But I am the biggest fan of Instagram. I'll tell you, the major reason. Besides personally, just a personal favorite, just because I love.
Because it's fun.
Photography and, good quotes. And I like to see what people are doing from a visual perspective. But what I will tell you is that Instagram will tell you more about your buyer in 10 seconds or less than any other social channel. I mean, literally, it'll tell you, are they a family person? How many kids do they have? Where do they like to travel? What do they like to eat? What's their favorite sports team? Are they a motivational person? Do they, what's their travel destinations that they spend their most time in? There's so much that I find from a commonality perspective to, create, strengthen, and, prolong conversations from Twitter. It's absolutely incredible. And I think right now it's kind of the competitive advantage for sales reps, if they actively know how to do it, on top of that, you can authentically show what you're doing and what value you bring, and what interests you to your buyers as well. And I think there's a human element to sales that we really lack. And that piece is, what are you doing outside of just selling? And how are you inspiring, motivating and educating your buyers versus the traditional ways that everybody else is doing it?
Right.
And Instagram, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I've really spent a lot of time understanding Instagram for about 1.5 years now. And it's very, very powerful. And I'll tell you, it's not always the conversation that happens from Instagram. It's the conversation that happens somewhere else. And I can't tell you how many people mention, hey, I've been following you on Instagram for a really long time.
Right.
Great stuff, right? So it's a slow way of influencing and strengthening those relationships.
Right. Over time, as opposed to a quick hit kind of thing. But yeah, I've been on both ends of that, where it's a brand, and over time you kind of build that relationship because you see that their visuals resonate with you. Or it could be, a personal connection. A number of people that I've met in my professional circle and also as friends started as Instagram connections. So let's jump to the next one, which I'm a bit familiar with, but not everyone may be. So Calendly, I see you use Calendly in a number of places across your social profiles. So, what's the problem this one's solving, and how has it worked for you as far as social selling goes?
And I have to say that I was the one that actually brought this up. Claire did let me pick the technology, so don't think that this is a self-serving thing. One of the things that I think sales reps are very bad at, and is making things easy for a buyer, right? And when I say that is, how can you efficiently save your buyer time to do everything that needs to be done in a sales process? The more efficient you are, the faster you're going to move through the funnel, the better your buyer is going to have from an experience perspective. And Calendly allows you to have conversations and easily give your buyer access to your calendar, right, to your time, and on their own terms. So I always say this, if an inbound lead came through the website, most sales reps are going to do one of two things, right? They're going to email you or they're going to call you. Now, the funny thing about that is that if I'm interested in something and I submit an inbound lead form, I don't necessarily want you to call me, right? I want you to give me a time and access to calendar so that I can set a time that works for me, when I'm available to set that time. And I think a lot of sales reps, there's this number, like the first, person to get them on the phone, 5 seconds. I'm not a true believer that works as well as it used to. Mm-hmm. My first step is I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, and in the invitation I say, just wanted to let you know, I got your, contact me request form. And in the subject line, just say, hey, I wanted to put a face with the name before I, gave you a call, because I know that you're interested, but here's my Calendly link, right? Book a time that works for you, and let's, figure out how I can help you solve a problem, using whatever information they gave me. But the second piece of that is then I'll go to email and I'll put in the email LinkedIn, right? And then in the message I'll say, hey, just sent you a LinkedIn, invitation. Would love to connect. So you can put a face with the name. Here's my Calendly link, and you let me know what time works for you. And the ball's in your court. Let's see how I can help you, right?
Right.
And that's a little simple trick, but if you think about that from a buyer experience, and I want everybody to kind of think about it in their own, from a personal perspective. And when you reach out to a sales rep, or a sales rep reaches out to you, it almost seems like it's always on the sales rep's time, right? Like it's not in your best interest. So right. Just from an experience perspective, just sending that link, whether that's on Twitter DM, LinkedIn DM, email, it's amazing how many people come back and go, wow, thank you. Here, I just booked your calendar. or, versus like they don't answer your call or they don't answer your email, right? Hey, when can we meet? When can we talk? Give them access right away, put the ball in their court. But the second piece to this is the Calendly link to me is huge because I put it in my LinkedIn profile.
Right, I noticed that, yeah.
So what I do is make things easier for your buyer, right? Now this is always for your buyer because I use it a little bit differently in my LinkedIn profile now, but as a little bit of as an influencer, I guess per se, whatever that means. There's a lot of people that have questions or want to pick my brain on something, and I'm completely okay with that. I think that that's part of the obligation that a true influencer has for their people, right, for their audience. Right. And what I do is I use that link and I block off time on Fridays so that anybody, including everyone on this webinar, can book time out on my calendar, and I'll spend 15 minutes with anybody, right? I don't pitch you. I don't even talk about myself. Right. Really, I like to know, what are kind of the, in the weeds problems that you're having on a daily basis in sales or social. What are you trying to solve? And it's amazing how many people book from that link, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how many relationships I've built and how many people that I've helped, and even more, how many people that have helped me, right? Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have booked it and we've had conversations and I've learned something from them. So from a networking perspective, it's huge, but all sales reps should have that Calendly link in there because you're working, especially in today's age where you have multiple buyers involved in the decision party, I guess you call it. Give people access to it, and they might not use it a ton, but I'll tell you what, that one time when somebody wants to get a hold of you and they can't, and they know they can go to your LinkedIn profile and you don't lose the deal, would be completely worth it.
Yeah, I won't spend too much time on this because I don't want to. Yeah, there's no need to toot our own horn as far as our product goes, and because we've got two more awesome tools to cover. But I think one thing that was really worth noting that you mentioned is putting it in the context of how it brings the other person value. So sometimes people will ask, like, well, isn't it kind of presumptuous to tell my buyer that I want them to get on my calendar? But it really depends on how you introduce it. So if you show someone, look, I'm making myself fully available and I'm happy to connect whenever it fits your schedule. Here's my full calendar. Like pick whatever's convenient and I will do all the legwork. Yeah, I think you're right. It really does. It easily shows that buyer just how ready you are to be of service versus it being a process that's on your time. So I think you really, really nailed that.
Well, I'll tell you one of the most frustrating things for me, and I'm guessing that most sales reps have gone through this, even marketers, right? Anybody, I guess. But is how many times have you emailed somebody, you've had a couple back and forths, and then you say, hey, let's chat, and they're like, okay, let's chat, and then you go send another email, and you're like, tell me a time that works for you. Give me 2 times, and then they give you 2 times, and all of a sudden, you don't hear back from them because the email got lost, and then you're like, hey, let me know what works, and then they're like, okay, well, these times work, and you're like, oh wait, you said, and it goes back and forth. What I can tell you that the number one problem that Calendly has fixed for me in sales is, what, great, let's chat. Here's a link to my calendar, and I think it's a messaging thing too. It's like, here, put, here's access to my calendar. This is all about you. What time works for you?
Totally.
Time, right? And I think that you will eliminate a lot of people that tell you they want to chat with you. Then it gets lost in email. Time kills the conversation. And B, you will actually become more effective because I can't tell you how many times I've booked my calendar, forgot to put it on there, told somebody, yeah, let's meet then, didn't put it on my calendar. You'll save yourself a lot of headache of missed appointments as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to jump to the next one just because I realize we're getting low on time, which is crazy. But tell me about Pic Play Post and like how you use it and how it's different than, I know it's a collage app, but what makes it different than any other collage app?
So yeah, exactly. I'm not a huge fan of all the collage apps in general, just because they're pretty basic. But what I like about Pic Play Post is that whenever I have an event, and I would say reference my Instagram for this. Whenever I have an event, I'm speaking at something, or, I've got something I want to promote, an ebook, a blog post. I'm very creative in the way that I promote content, right? And one of the reasons is because I think that you have to be different in your approach, especially in sales, to get people to notice you, right? Because if most people are kind of boring on Instagram, Twitter, and all these different channels, Pic Play Post fixes this problem. The reason being is because it allows you to bring in multiple images and resize them. But the real kicker and where it differentiates itself is the video piece. So you can put multiple videos in one collage. You can pull in YouTube videos that either you're trying to pull like a Simon Sinek clip, or you want to pull a Tony Robbins clip.
Right.
With one click of the button, it pulls straight in from YouTube, allows you to pick which of the segments up to a minute that you would like to pull in, and it automatically pulls that in, and you never have to leave the app. So, the best way for me to show you this is go to my Instagram, and you can look at the many different ways that I used it. So anything that's, not just one single image. The other piece to this is Instagram stories. So where a lot of people kind of are confused is Instagram stories, because when you put something in an Instagram story, like a video or a photograph, the size imagery is off. So within Pic Play Post, what I do is I use, they have a really skinny one, and I can't think of the size of it, but it actually fits Instagram stories perfectly, so that, you can put videos in your Instagram story that are customized. You can put customizable images. And if you're smart and you're creative, this tool goes a long way. I mean, from a basic level, if you just use it at the most basic level, it's not, going to wow you. But if you really dig deep into it and look at the really creative ways you can use it,
yeah,
it will make you stand out. And, I'm a firm believer that the people that stand out are the ones that people want to have a conversation with.
Definitely. I think it's interesting that, well, one thing that's super cool is that you can do all that from within the app. So you don't have to go to YouTube, copy something, come back to it. So that makes it super easy. But also the idea of incorporating it into your Instagram stories, really, really, really cool. And for anyone who's wondering or trying to figure out, okay, so how do we go look at your Instagram? On the final slide of this is all of Jack's social info. It's your Twitter handles. But as you mentioned, Jack, your Twitter handle and your Instagram handle are the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. So you will get that as a resource for everyone who's wanting to go see what that looks like. So let's jump to the final one here. Basically, from what I understand, it's the platform that brings everything together. So Sprout Social, I know, is what you use to manage all your profiles. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So, excuse me. Did a lot of research. So we work with, enterprise companies, and we work with, massive sales teams, small sales teams, I guess of all sizes. But one of the major problems was, how do you manage all of the conversation, right? And, one thing that lacks the most with salespeople is they go on social media and they use it for media. They don't use it for social, right? So you really have to, and I think there's a reason for that. I think it's because, Twitter is not the most friendly tool when it comes to giving you the insight you need to figure out who I should be, who's doing what and who I should be having a conversation with, right? And what Sprout does is it actually breaks down there's a variety of ways you can use it, but major way that I think differentiates it and where salespeople and social media people can get the most value is managing your conversations on social and on multiple channels. So, Twitter, we have a strict process of, who we engage with, what insight we use, what messaging, we use. Mm-hmm. And really with Sprout, we can always see what the conversation is. It keeps a full history in our inbox and really allows us to be effective with communication and not get lost in the noise, right? Understand who we need to be meeting with. It allows you to tag, sales leads, sales conversations,
nice,
customer service. And it's a little bit more in depth of a tool, right? The first four are, pretty basic free tools. But Sprout, well, I guess Calendly, you can sign up for Calendly for free too. So Sprout is a little bit more expensive, a little bit pricey, but you can do a 30-day trial. And if you're struggling with the conversation piece and managing it, you've got to spend your time in Sprout.
I love that you mentioned, you can kind of string all these different pieces of conversation together into one like coherent conversation so that you understand, okay, this is my entire history with this person or this this is my entire history with this company. Because that can definitely get overwhelming if you're trying to do it by hand.
Yeah, I guess one last piece is that, a lot of times, social media marketers, which I truly believe that this is a really good way to do social selling, especially at a scalable level. Social media marketers might be, helping and assisting sales and posting content, right, through an employee advocacy platform,
right.
doing that. And the social media marketers might be the first touch point, right? They might be the ones that thank people for sharing their message.
Definitely.
And what happens is, if the social media marketer is doing their job right, they're actually becoming the SDR for the sales team, right? And looking for the right buyer personas, people that are highly interested, people that are, showing buying signals, they're asking questions, and inside of the tool, you can actually push out the different conversations that are happening to your sales team, and you can preference in an email and say, hey, I noticed that, X, Y, and Z is on the website. See, we have an opportunity. They've shared a few of our articles today, and here's what I would tweet them. And a lot of times, marketing can help sales preference the tweet, give them the instructions, make it easy for sales, and email it right to them. All they have to do is click on the link.
Yeah. I appreciate the overview. And also I think for those who aren't spending their time in those roles or who are just considering adding that piece to their team, that's a really helpful way to kind of understand what the inside process is supposed to look like. And then I think last thing here, I know that we're already over time. So Jack, do you have a hard stop? Do you have something you have to be to right after this?
Oh, no, I'm good. No.
Okay. Because there are, I think, one or two questions that have been coming in that I would love to shoot your way. And then for anyone who's been wondering, we've been recording this and you'll get an entire copy of it sent to you afterwards. So no need to worry if you came in late or you had to miss some of it. But the first thing we saw is from Kevin here. He wants to know, when he's trying to sell anything on social, he feels like disingenuous, even though he's not. And I've had questions come from people before who maybe they're new to social selling and they haven't really found their voice. So, if you quote unquote like hate selling, or you feel like you're not a genuine seller, like what's something you can do? How can you fix that?
Well, I always look at it like this. If you went to a conference, right, which is, just a big place that a niche, targeted people come to get value, right? You got to look at Twitter as kind of like that, right? I mean, if you're at a conference, do you walk up to somebody and you say, hey, I sell XYZ, do you want to buy it? I mean, no, there's such a natural, organic, way that conversation happens, right? Like, hey, what do you guys do? And there's personal touches, there's professional touches. You got to think of Twitter, especially Twitter and all the different social channels, as an online conference, right? And what I always try to tell people is the best way to start a conversation on social is to never sell. It's to advocate. So, you've got to be very strategic. If you're on Twitter and you want to get into conversation with somebody, you should never sell. I mean, and also you should never sell when you're on the phone or email. I mean, I guess that's where a lot of people go wrong.
Right.
You've got to really think about, how can I earn the right to ask these people for their time or their business, right? I think that's a lost art in sales today. So my mindset is, I'm going to use social to look for some way that I can give personal and professional value. And you have to figure that out. Like, I don't like to give people that answer. But, think about, on the other end, can you share something for them, right?
Right.
Can you, if they shared a piece of content that you read and you thought it was just amazing, thank them for sharing that piece of content, right? I can't tell you how many times somebody's shared a piece of content and I've read it and it's helped me elevate my career, right? Well, I'm going to thank somebody for that because I probably wouldn't have found that piece of it if it wasn't for them, right?
Totally.
So just don't think about selling. Start off on social as not using it to sell, as using it to build a network of niche people that you get a ton of value from, and slowly work your way into the selling piece, which should happen offline after you've built up that community of advocates, people that you're getting value from, and it's really targeted.
Definitely. And I'll throw one last question out. There are a couple others coming in, but maybe these can actually just go to social. Maybe these can happen on Twitter, where they can take place back and forth. But a great final question that's been thrown our way is, do you have any favorite books or other sources of content you recommend for people who want to get better at this, for people who want to learn more?
So yes, I will tell you that if you visit my website, I'm one of those people that I don't like the fluffy aspect of social selling. So if you're in sales or you're even in marketing, it doesn't matter. What I've done throughout my career in the last 2.5 years is I've actually documented when something's happened, when revenues happened, or more conversations are happened, or some type of impactful KPIs happened. I've actually went and wrote a post that was how I did it, right, step by step, and then the actual results. So you can get step by step. If you go, Jack, I don't know how to do this, right? I have one that's called 5 ways to start social selling with baby steps, right? Super simple stuff. I've got more complex stuff, but there is a couple books. I would say Tim Hughes has a book, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. Social Selling for Game Changers, I believe. That's really good. And there's not a lot of good books on social selling.
Blogs mainly.
Yeah, it's a lot of content. But yeah, I would say Tim Hughes' book is where I would start.
Okay, very cool. Jack, thank you so much for running through all this. This was super valuable. We've got a couple people asking about these different platforms and why you might choose one over the other. So for those who are interested, let's take that over to Twitter. Let's take that over to social media. We're all on there. As you can see, I've got Jack's information. I've got Calendly's information, and then my personal Twitter, if that's also useful. And again, all of this, we will be sending a recording of by email afterward. So thanks everyone for taking the time to join. Thanks, Jack, for sharing all of this really, really helpful insight. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care.